It's a tough call. They're so different.
Something funny?
No, nothing's, it's just that both those belts look exactly the same to me.
I see. You think this has nothing to do with you. You go to your closet and you select that lumpy blue sweater, for instance, because you're trying to tell the world that you take yourself too seriously to care about what you put on your back.
She hates me, Nigel.
All right, we're doing this for you. We're doing this Dolce for you. Jimmy Choo, Nola Blahnik, Nancy Gonzalez. Love that. Okay, Narciso Rodriguez. This we love. Okay, now Chanel. You're in desperate need of Chanel.
I mean, I have no idea why Miranda hired her.
Me neither.
From the moment I saw her, she was going to be a complete and utter disaster. Are you wearing the
Chanel boots? Yeah, I am.
You look good.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of ERG Power Talk. I'm your host, Joe Santana. That clip is from the 2006 movie, The Devil Wears Prada. The movie is about Andy Sachs, played by Anne Hathaway, a recent college graduate with big dreams who lands a job with a tough boss, played by Meryl Streep. No one would ever believe that the Andy who joined that company could ever amount to anything in that highly competitive fashion industry. She didn't look the part or sound the part, but then she took matters into her own hands, and with a little help from a co-worker played by Stanley Tucci, she reinvented herself into a new version of herself that, to everyone's surprise, rises to become the fashion magazine's new editor. And we all love stories like that because of the hope they inspire in us. And according to neuroscience, those hopes are not pinned on just fanciful daydreams. The science and scores of examples suggest that we all have the potential to reinvent ourselves into a better, more successful, more fulfilled version of ourselves. So how can you tap into that? How can you continuously build and upgrade yourself into a better, happier, more successful version of you? That's our topic for today, and we have the perfect guest to help us with that. But before we introduce our guests, let's take a moment to review our mission and acknowledge our sponsors. This is ERG Power Talk, and I'm your host, Joe Santana. The purpose of ERG Power Talk is to provide a virtual forum for the exchange of great ideas and inspiration for ERG leaders, as well as others interested in supporting ERGs. No more waiting until the next conference and praying that you get the budget to travel to the conference in order to find great ideas and stimulation towards action. Just subscribe and listen at your convenience. Before we begin, a quick note of thanks to our supporters and sponsors. UL Solutions, CVS Health, Dollar General, Freighter Health, and Wisconsin Medical College, Hiscox, Mass Mutual, McCormick, Tapestry, Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, MIT Lincoln Laboratory, Elastic, Oshkosh Corporation, Peace Health, Pitney Bowes, Daimler Trucks North America, and Sony Pictures Entertainment. Now, let's go straight to the program. She is an expert in senior executive coaching with over 30 years of experience in the field. She's worked with thousands of executives, helping them to unlock their full potential and achieve greater success in their personal and professional lives. Her approach is based on the latest scientific research into how our minds work, and her proprietary Power Pathways methodology has been proven to deliver real results. In her book, Unlimiting Your Beliefs, 7 Keys to Greater Success in Your Personal and Professional Life, she shares her insights into how executives can identify and overcome their blind spots to achieve greater success.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Brown, CEO of Exponential Results, which is a full-service leadership and development coaching firm.
Karen, welcome to ERG Power Talk. So, Karen, I understand you've had some personal experience in overcoming limits. In fact, I see that Iron Man poster sitting right behind you. Can you tell us a little about that and how you entered your current field?
Yes, absolutely. And let me lead into that by saying I'm so glad that you played that clip from The Devil Wears Prada, because that is a perfect story of transformation. And we are all our own stewards or captains of transformation. I certainly being one of them. So appropriate that you played that clip. And I'm a huge movie buff, and that's one of my favorites. So yes, neuroscience plays, I think, the most integral role in transforming ourselves. And it's because it's actually because I fell into it many years ago, let's just say. And it's because I was an up-and-coming leader, a rising leader in my organization. I was working in the corporate world. And honestly, I didn't know how to be a better leader. I didn't know what to do to bring out my team's best performance. So I literally did what fascinates me, which is ask questions about human behavior. I'm very interested and curious about humans and how they work. And so I started asking my team members questions and things like, what motivates you to get out of bed in the morning and come to work, and to come to work here? What motivates you every day? How do you do things when they're hard? What gets you through them? Questions like that. And what I found is it worked really well. My team members started flourishing and thriving. And then I thought, well, what the heck is it that I'm doing exactly? So then I started to educate myself and realize that what I was doing was coaching them. And so I thought, oh, that's what I really enjoy. I want to do more of that. So over the next decade, 15 years or so, began studying coaching, then leadership coaching, dove deeper into it, and then I discovered neuroscience as part of my journey to the Ironman World Championships as an amateur athlete at age 44. So, hey, it's never too late, never too old to do anything. And then discovered, after putting it all together, along with my experiences along the way, and those being a leader and working with different leaders across the organization, that was the key that I had been looking for. That neuroscience specifically and working in behavioral patterns, those were the difference makers, the game changers, if you will, in your story of transformation, in being able to elevate your performance and success.
Karen, I heard you talk about a career progression model, which you described really neatly as I do, we do, they do. And as you were talking about that, I was thinking, what a great lesson that would be for many of our listeners who are ERG leaders, because ERG leaders tend to be passionate people that come from roles as doers. So most of them, I would say, are in the I do category. A few might be in the we do category. But in that role as a chair of a group, they almost have to put on the next hat, which is the they do hat. And if you fail to do that, you can literally, as some people have, drive yourself to the ground, trying to do everything yourself. So I'd love for you to talk about that progression model that you learned about, which is important to that transformation that people need to make within themselves to turn themselves into the kind of person that will be successful leading a community group or an organization or a department.
Yes. So it's I do, we do, they do, in that order. And as you might surmise, I do is when we are individual contributors. Then we do is when we step into the role to work on a team. So we're working with others. We're still an individual contributor, but now we're part of a team that is taking on bigger things, delivering bigger results, if you will. Then they do is when I step fully into a leadership role and I have a team of direct reports. And so I have to lead them, and I'm really no longer in the individual contributor mode. And you're absolutely right. What the key to success in that progression, especially when you're an ERG person, an ERG leader, and you're leading a community, is you're right. You have to wear both hats at once, and you have to toggle between I do, and then we do, and then maybe even they do in leading the team. So the way that works is when you can, first of all, realize, become aware that that's what you're doing, and surround yourself with people that are probably more talented than you are. I always say, hey, I surround myself with people that are far smarter than I am. They're far smarter. They're far more talented. I want that to be the case so that I can rely on their intellect and their experience and so forth to do a better job than I would, quite frankly. I'm very limited on what I'm great at, and I like to stick to that. So I surround myself with people who are great at the things that I'm not great at. And so that's also figures into that model of I do, we do, they do. And just notice when there's an opportunity for you to move seamlessly into the next one, or to make that toggle between I do and we do, and maybe even reaching up to they do. It's perfectly okay, because you know what? You're right, Joe. If you don't do that, then you are ultimately going to fail. And so is the team. So are those around you, because you cannot do it all. Believe me, I've tried. It doesn't work out. You'll end up burning yourself out and a few other people along the way, and it won't be pretty. Yeah, so step into this quickly. And even though it often, when we're stepping into the they do, it feels like we're letting go of the reins. And for us control freaks in the room, yes, I'm a poster child for that. That's scary. Because we're not sure how things are going to turn out. And maybe we feel responsible for the results. That's okay. You've got to let go of those reins, giving people expectations and guidelines, and then let them run. The Kentucky Derby was just on Saturday. Let them run. They're thoroughbreds.
That's great. One of the things that I detect from my general research on the work that you do is that one of the common beliefs that we share is that when you step into a new role, whether you're leading an ERG group or you're leading a committee or leading a department, you get promoted into the head of some general office, what you need to bring to this new larger role is not just a new set of skills. It's literally a new version of you that you need to bring. The old version of you working harder with a couple of added skills is probably not going to cut it. You literally have to step into another set of shoes, and you have to re-outfit yourself completely. It's a complete transformation. I think that's something that's important. And I would believe that's along the very same lines of what you believe and what you've seen. I'd love you to talk about that a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you, Joe. Being that new level leader is a metamorphosis. Literally, that's what you're doing. And so it involves your entire mindset, not just some skills, techniques, or some slogans or memes. And there's so many aspects to it. It's hard to list them all. And it's an all or nothing proposition. You've got to fully commit to it. And you're going to learn and grow how to not only evaluate your team member strengths, but also your own as well. I often think of it like you've got to be able to lead yourself effectively before you can lead others effectively. And leadership doesn't happen without self-awareness. That is a key component that that's where you need to start, is that self-awareness where maybe you're asking other people for feedback about how you're leading, your leadership skill, how you're doing on things that you share that you're working on. And then actively invite that feedback and then take it in and then work on each thing systematically. You know, it's how do you eat an elephant in the room? Bite by bite. It's the same kind of thing with leadership improvement. The other thing I like to utilize is actually something that a client shared with me, which is pull the thumb rather than pointing the finger. I love this phrase because What it means is look at your contribution to what's happening before pointing the fingers at others. That's what great leaders do. They immediately ask themselves that question. Hey, what's my contribution to this situation? And how could it be different and therefore create different results for the team? And then you can, once you answer that question, then you can look at what's happening for others and even maybe ask them what they feel their contribution is to the current situation. Also, I love when, as leaders, we own when something goes wrong. I like to say that we fall on our sword. And it doesn't take an apology or an I'm sorry to do this. It's just, hey, that's on me. Maybe I could have set this up better, or I could have been clearer about expectations, whatever it is, but just take ownership of it. And then give most of the credit to your team when something or many things go right, because that's probably what's causing it to go right. Instead of beating your chest and saying, oh, I'm so great. I knew that would go right as long as we did it my way.
As I'm listening to you, especially that analogy that you just use about the thumb versus the finger. And in ERG context, you could look at the people around you and say, I'm doing all the work and they're doing nothing. This is really awful. And I've got a full-time job and this is really driving me up the wall because I have all these other activities and no one else is stepping in. Using that analogy, the first question you would ask yourself is, what am I doing that either miscommunicates so that people don't know exactly what their roles are, or that communicates that I'm going to take the reins of this and manage it all on my own, and that maybe they can come in and help? How am I communicating this in such a way that perhaps isn't engaging everybody to jump in and help? So it really is a look in the mirror, because sometimes the problem that we see in front of us is really a reflection of certain things that we're doing. So I love that, using the thumb versus the finger. So talk a little more about the neuroscience-based methodologies. I think I'd love to explore that more. Most of the people listening are people that are familiar with things like unconscious bias. They're familiar with certain aspects already of neuroscience and how our brain operates. But talk about it in terms of this development piece and how we can use some of that science on ourselves to improve ourselves.
Yes. So it's really the part of neuroscience, or the segment of neuroscience, that has to do with behavioral patterns. And behavioral patterns live in the unconscious level of our brain. So if your conscious level's up here, unconscious is down here. And since the group knows about unconscious bias, that's a perfect example of a behavioral pattern. If you boil down unconscious bias, its simplest form is a behavioral pattern. And it's just that it resides in a very deep, or the unconscious level of our brain. So it's ingrained, and it may be so much so that it feels to us like part of our hard wiring. Here's the cool part, though. It isn't. If you study neuroscience enough, you'll get to the quick conclusion or discovery that only 5% of who we are and how we act is hardwired. The other 95% is changeable. It is flexible. It's up for grabs, if you will. And so when you work in behavioral patterns, which I'll just define them like this, a behavioral pattern is a recurrent way of acting toward a given subject or in a situation. And taking that even further, we work in blind spots as well. And that is a behavioral pattern that you're simply unaware of or don't see. So that's why it's really helpful when somebody holds up that mirror for us, because then we can see blind spots. And it's in these blind spots that provide our greatest opportunity for change and growth and to create exponential results.
As you were talking about that, it took me back a little bit years ago when I took media training. I remember one of the exercises that they did was they had all of us submit the names of people that knew us, either from a professional standpoint as a colleague, or maybe an academic standpoint or a friend. And They would basically ask the person, what are some things about, in this case, me, Joe, would be good questions to ask him that would put him back on his heels, questions that would like basically just knock him off his game. And then they videotaped someone asking me these questions, and then they showed me that tape. And they used that feedback to make me aware of my unconscious reactions, whether it was my physical movement, my eyes, the way I paused, or maybe the way I repeated a certain question. All these different things that even I could read into very quickly, like, wow, that looks unsure. Oh, that looks kind of off, right? And it's amazing when you take something that's hidden from a person and through feedback, you put it in front of them, because once they see it, they know where it is. And then now they can begin to act on it, which was part of what this training was about. So I know how powerful it is to do something like that, to bring that unconscious behavior into awareness. Okay, so let's pause here and take stock of what we've learned from the first half of our discussion with Karen. 1, a key to being an effective ERG leader is to learn when to operate in one of the 3 main work modes, which are I do, we do, they do. I do is when you're operating as an individual contributor. We do is when you're working as part of a team. And you do is when we're leading others to do the work. Good community leaders know how to transition from across modes to avoid being a one-trick pony that either burns out by trying to do it all or hogs all the activity when they should be part of a team, or refuses to let other people own their activities. 2, stepping into any new leadership role requires a transformation and a new mindset. That old saying, what got you here won't get you there, is true. If you're a new ERG leader, don't count on just hard work and a few new skills to make you successful. You will need to grow and evolve into the kind of person that is successful in your new role. This is especially true if you come from an individual contributor background and have never walked in the shoes of a leader. 3, if you think changing yourself is impossible because you are who you are, remember that only 5% of your behavior is hardwired into your brain, and the remaining 95% is changeable by you. 4, gaining a deeper understanding of our brain's behavior patterns can help improve leadership development. This can surface blind spots, which are behavior patterns we are unaware of, and it will provide us with opportunities to change those and to grow. And finally, 5, a big key to unlocking those hidden set behavior patterns so that you can change and grow is increasing your self-awareness. And to secure that increased self-awareness, you should seek feedback from colleagues, coaches, and friends. As one of my management development heroes, Ken Blanchard, used to say, feedback is the breakfast of champions. In the next segment of our discussion with Karen, we will explore how you can take your ERG's performance to the next level while leveraging your role as an ERG leader to develop yourself and your community members into better leaders. All this and more when we come back, but first this. I'll see you on the other side. Are you an ERG group or committee chair struggling to balance your ERG activities with your day job responsibilities? Well, you're not alone. There are hundreds of thousands of passionate ERG leads all around the world that find themselves in the same boat. The only solution found by many is to give up lunch hours and personal time with family and friends. But there is a better way, and that better way is to master the powerful skills that enable you to 1, set realistic and achievable compelling goals and priorities. 2, distribute the workload by effectively delegating tasks and responsibilities to others. 3, communicate in a way that increases your impact with less time and effort on your part. 4, secure the full and active support of executive sponsors and other senior business leaders. And 5, fit your ERG leadership work into a reasonable set of time boundaries. And that and more is exactly what tens of thousands of your colleagues have learned to do effortlessly by participating in Supercharge Workshops. Supercharge Workshops was developed by us along the same easy and powerful how-to framework found in our popular Supercharge Your ERGs book. The modular, customizable programs are loaded with fun exercises and tools that will immediately give you back hours of time each day while increasing your ability to achieve high impact and measurable results in both your ERG work and your job. For more details on how you can schedule a Supercharge Workshop session in your organization, go to superchargeworkshops.com. That's https:// Supercharge Workshops, one word with no spaces.com. So don't suffer silently. Take that first step towards stopping your struggle today. Check out Supercharge Workshops. You talk about power pathways. Tell me more about that.
So power pathways is the term that we coined, I guess you would say, for making behavioral pattern changes, because you're basically creating new neural pathways in your unconscious mind. That's what you're doing when you change one behavioral pattern for another. And so this is our methodology, if you will, and I'll lay it out for you. It's 5 steps, and it begins with identify your goals and objectives. So what are you going for? What are you looking to achieve? Then establish a plan, metrics of measurement, because you get what you measure, and target goal dates. Then uncover the thinking patterns causing challenges. This is where your professional coach is really important. It's where we make all the difference, because we're able to read behavioral patterns. Linguistically, we're able to read them. So literally, Joe, if you were my client, I could ask you a question, and based on your answer, like the grab bag exercise you just shared with us, based on your answer, I can pick up what the behavioral patterns are that are at work behind the scenes. And then I can ask you questions to open that up and to bring it into awareness. Then we pinpoint those patterns, the root causes, the impact, and then resolution options. You've got to understand where and why that behavioral pattern was created. It's always for a reason in your unconscious mind, but it's usually something that we forgot about long ago, because our unconscious mind works so fast and at such high volume that we let that stuff go. We forget about it like it was eons ago. So that 4th step is really, really important. Otherwise, it's just as if you're trying to change a habit. And if any of you have done that, I'm sure we all have, the data out there suggests that it takes around 66 days to change a habit. And for many of us, it feels like white knuckling, like forcing it. And then it may or may not be a permanent change. Well, this is where the power of working in the unconscious mind and the behavioral patterns within it works, because it's always permanent and it's much faster. So clients have changed behavioral patterns in 30 days or less. I've seen clients do it in 2 weeks. I've done it in 2 weeks or less. And then the fifth step is evaluate and measure progress and accomplishments. Look at what you've accomplished, look at the behavioral pattern or patterns that you've changed, and then determine the next level. We're able to graph this progress through our proprietary app and system that we use. And it's really helpful for our unconscious minds to see this visually. And think about it this way, it's really positive reinforcement. Because when you see that you're doing well at something, you're making changes and you're garnering better results, well, it's very motivating to continue. And because then it seems kind of easy, like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. I can do this. All right, I want to do more of it. It feels good. So it's identify, establish, uncover, pinpoint, and evaluate. Those are the 5 steps.
So resource groups are headed up by people who, as I said earlier, normally do not have regular leadership positions in their day jobs. But within the resource group, they certainly do have that leadership position. And I believe that this affords them an opportunity to exercise those muscles and learn how to develop them within the safety of this supportive type of community. So what are your thoughts on how a resource group leader can use their resource group role as an opportunity to gain some experiential development for themselves and become better leaders, a skill that they can then take and utilize in day jobs or in other roles that they have later on? And also, by extension, is this something also that is afforded to some of the members? Because within that resource group, even though they may not lead the resource group, they certainly have the opportunity to lead certain types of initiatives. And that, again, is an opportunity to model that behavior. What are your thoughts on that?
You're in the perfect position to leverage what we're talking about and get on the road to becoming a better leader. It's because you're already leading a community. You're interacting with so many different people of all cultures, races, ethnicities, needs, desires, you name it. And having already done this, you've overcome and transformed unconscious bias, which is simply another behavioral pattern. So you're already doing this, and then you can leverage it into other areas of your leadership. So I would say actively seek opportunities to learn and grow and do things differently, engage differently than in the past, and bring others along, holding the space for their uniqueness. And then I think you'll have a better sense than most people of how to identify each individual's strengths and areas for growth, because you're working on your own. Makes it much easier to see. And then allowing everybody autonomy to grow and change and make maximum impact. That's really the mark of a great leader.
We've all heard that comment about great leaders don't just build followers, they help to develop other leaders. And I, again, would emphasize that I think that it's a tremendous advantage when you lead a group like a business resource group or an employee resource group, because at some point in your career, as you grow and develop and you're tapped to take on new responsibilities, that won't be your first rodeo in terms of leading. You will have had already some experience that you gained from being able to play that role in that community. So I think that's one of the big benefits that leading resource groups offers resource group leaders and other leads who take on projects and initiatives. Karen, from your experience, I know you work a lot with senior executives, but can you provide any specific examples of successful leadership strategies that ERG community leaders can use?
Yes, absolutely. So I have 3 to share. The first one is embracing and utilizing authentic leadership, which simply means sharing all of yourself authentically with others. Now, this doesn't mean oversharing. You don't need to pull up a couch and some tissues and, let it all hang out. What it does mean is admitting you won't have all the answers, nor trying to tell people what to do as a leader. Instead, catalyze people's ability to think and find elevated solutions that work for all, including the company. Then second item is work on RQ. Now, RQ is relationship intelligence quotient. So think EQ, and it's the next level of EQ. And what it means is how you work in relationship with others to get things done. I love this work and this system. This is a program that we use with teams when we're working with them. And it specifically maps out how you interact with others to get things done. It's fascinating, eye-opening, and accurate. Literally every time we share this with a team, they are blown back in their chair and they go, how in the world did you know this? This is exactly what plays out within our team. The cool part about it is it reveals each person's unique conflict sequence and helps you learn productive conflict and healthy debate. And what we're seeing right now in the marketplace with teams of all levels, all sizes, all company sizes, is that they all engage a little bit differently with conflict. A lot of people shy away from conflict and they just pull back altogether. It's very uncomfortable. They don't want anything to do with it. But that comes at a great cost, because if you have ideas that you're not sharing because you feel like that's gonna put you in conflict with a team member, that whole team has lost out on your intellect and your unique contributions. We also go to the other side of the spectrum where maybe there's some team members in the room that are pretty aggressive when it comes to conflict. And there can be some of, that whole spectrum in between. So right now, to just put a period on the end of this point, it's estimated that unproductive conflict costs companies $580 billion a year. And I would venture to ask you, what is it costing you? So I would work on RQ, remember that, and learn it and work on it, because that is the path forward in successful leadership strategies now. And then the third thing is openly engage. Openly engage with people. Be curious and inquisitive about them. Ask questions in their one-on-ones like, what's your biggest dream? Even if it has nothing to do with their job, what they're doing with the ERG, what the company does for that matter. I mean, back in the day, my biggest dream was the Ironman World Championships and beyond. It had nothing to do with my work, and yet it also propelled everything that I was doing. I also like to ask, what can I do to support actualizing your biggest dream? And basically, people are all looking for a workplace that will support them as the person, them as the individual, and will allow them to fulfill their dreams and aspirations. They want to work for a company that's more like a family and less like a company. Well, I should say more like a healthy family, less like a company. They want to be more engaged. And then simply do it. Simply engage with people, meet people where they are and learn their aspirations.
So Karen, what resources do you recommend for learning more about this topic? We covered a broad range of different topics, all centering around creating a better version of ourselves. What are some of the resources that you recommend?
Well, I would say use a technique that we use. And then I can talk a little bit about resources. First of all, identify your blind spots and growth edges, because that's really what blind spots are. They are simply growth edges, down to the individual behavioral pattern. Just make a list of them. Maybe you get it through feedback. Maybe you get it through heightened awareness. Whatever way, though, make a list. And then identify what results you are seeing versus the results you want to create. Then draw lines from the pattern to the results, then cross that out and replace it with the desired results. Then ask yourself, what's the new pattern you can put in place that will create the corresponding result? It really is that simple. And then ask others for help. Frankly, a professional coach is best, but you can ask your peers, your teammates, community, boss. Share the information about your behavioral patterns and what you're working on. Then invite them to give you real-time feedback on when you are changing the pattern. Positive reinforcement goes a long way. And when you're not progressing on changing the pattern. And then track results. Again, we do this in our proprietary app, but you can emulate this with a reminder on your phone and a spreadsheet logging the same time each day the behavioral pattern that you're changing. Yeah, and this is actually much easier than it probably sounds in me just explaining it. So additional resources, I would say, first of all, just decide to work on yourself. It's that decision that's going to open up a whole lot of resources for you. And I'm a big proponent of, once you are open, the right resources that you need at the time will appear. It's reading, it's listening to podcasts like this one. Ask others what helps them. Tell somebody or share with somebody what you're working on, and ask them what helped them in a similar situation. I'd contemplate each one and then consume the one that speaks to you. There's a reason that whatever it is calling out to you right now. It's probably what you need in this moment. And then simply make it a daily practice to work on yourself. I do it every morning. It's my quiet time when I'm having coffee and before I go to the gym. And it has worked beautifully well for me. Now, also, if I were to share one specific resource, if you pressed me on it right now, I'd probably recommend my book, which is called Unlimiting Your Beliefs, because it lays out behavioral patterns like this in a wonderfully entertaining story, which happens to be my own. And I can certainly laugh at myself and invite you to laugh at me with me. But I'm nothing special. I'm just like everybody else. And in that, we are all actually special and unique. And knowing how our brains learn and retain information, it's through story. And so that's why I wrote the book, because I thought, we really don't need to struggle with this kind of behavioral pattern anymore. It's simply a historical evolutionary bug that's left over in our operating system. And so, here's what you can do about it. And you can eradicate limiting beliefs truly forever.
Great advice. And Karen, where can people get your book?
They can find my book on Amazon. Again, my name is Karen Brown, like the color, and the book is called Unlimiting Your Beliefs. If you simply put that into the search bar on Amazon, my book will pop up, and then it'll be on its way to your doorstep.
Fantastic. And Karen, how can our listeners reach you personally?
So all of my contact information is on my website, that's spelled YOUR, exponentialresults.com. And I welcome personal emails and wholeheartedly support ERG's mission.
Fantastic. Karen, thanks again for being on ERG Power Talk today.
Such a pleasure, Joe. Thank you.
So let's look at what we got out of this second segment of our discussion with Karen. 1, to start on your path of self-development as a leader, you need to begin by defining what you want to achieve with your ERG, and then define who you need to be as a leader of that ERG to accomplish that goal. Once you have a clear objective for your development plan, establish milestone targets, goal achievement dates, and metrics you will use to measure your progress. By the way, you can also get on this personal leadership development path as an ERG member by stepping up to lead one of the group's initiatives. 2, uncover the thinking patterns presenting you with obstacles and challenges that block you from reaching your personal leadership goal. To do that, seek feedback from others, as noted earlier. Ideally, a professional coach, but you can also leverage colleagues and friends. Work to pinpoint the root cause and impact of your current behavior patterns. Understand why certain patterns were created, how they affect your leadership. Determine alternative behavior strategies that you can use to replace those identified patterns. And then regularly assess your progress in replacing your old patterns with new ones that bring you closer to your self-development objective. And when you reach those objectives, celebrate your achievements to stay motivated. 3, get into the habit of sharing your authentic self with others, admitting your limitations. Also be curious. Ask your group members questions so that you can learn about their true aspirations and dreams. Give each of them the support they need to find their own solutions so that they can grow and develop into better leaders who in turn support your leadership. 4, to continue your development as a leader beyond your initial creation of You 2.0, work to continuously build your relationship intelligence quotient, or RQ. While EQ is your individual emotional intelligence, RQ focuses on how you interact with others to get things done. This includes learning how to productively handle conflict and facilitate healthy group debate. And finally, 5, keep educating yourself as a leader by reading books, listening to podcasts, and asking others for development recommendations. Make your personal development as a leader a daily, year-round, lifetime practice. A while back, I came across the story of a caterpillar named Oliver. Oliver lived in a lush garden where he met a wise butterfly named Sophia. One day, Oliver confided in Sophia his deep fear of the unknown that awaited him once he went into the cocoon. He told Sophia how his fears haunted him. He was actually quite old for a caterpillar, but he just hesitated to start building that transformative cocoon because he wondered, would he still be Oliver if he stopped crawling around the garden eating the bitter leaves? Sophia assured him that his transformation would make him into a bigger and more beautiful version of himself. Trust me, she said, you'll still be Oliver, but with a newfound joy. She further helped Oliver to overcome his fear by getting him to observe and talk to all the other caterpillars that had emerged as butterflies from their cocoons. So finally, Oliver decided to take the plunge and trust Sophia. And so he went and he built his cocoon where he magically was transformed into a beautiful butterfly. Flying high above his beloved garden and tasting the sweet nectar of all the flowers around him, Oliver now understood the wisdom of the quote from Richard Bach, the writer, that Sophia had shared with him. What the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the master calls a butterfly. Oliver's simple story is a timeless reminder of the potential for transformation and power that lies within each of us, just beyond the obstacles of our own fears and lack of self-confidence. We can all break past our former self-imposed limits when we decide to look at who we are and who we want to be, and then commit to moving forward past our self-constructed obstacles and fears. ERG Leadership gives you the golden opportunity to exercise and develop your leadership muscles, as well as help others to exercise theirs. I trust the discussions that we had today with Karen armed you with the knowledge tools that you need to start your journey. So what's left now? For you to act. Thank you for tuning in to ERG Power Talk. If you enjoyed and got value out of this program, please like us and leave a favorable review at your podcast provider's site. Also, invite others to listen to the show. By the way, contact me if you're looking for an ERG Symposium keynote or a leader for your strategy workshop, new chair onboarding, and or ERG bootcamp. I can run these for you either in person or in a virtual setting. Also, for more great ideas and tips for your ERGs, get my books, Supercharge Your ERGs, 18 Tips to Power Up Your ERG/BRG Strategy, and the new DEI and ERG Frontier, how you and your efforts can rise and thrive in the new world of constant disruption. Both available on Amazon.com. I'm Joe Santana. Thanks again for tuning in.